you have no idea what to expect. It's it's a very, very different world that we deal with. Like I often say, 90% of the population is shielded by us and have no idea what goes on right underneath their noses. Like it's a very much a culture shock, and as somebody who did that news reporting, in my previous career on crime stuff, I was shocked at how much I did not know. So it was a very humbling experience.
Welcome to OTR, Achieving Mental Health for Real. This is where we talk honestly about what people actually live with: anxiety, depression, ADHD, dyslexia, OCD, trauma, and more. No stigma, no sugarcoating, just real conversations about how you think, how you feel, and how you move through the world. If you're looking for clarity, validation, and a place where your story makes sense, you're in the right space. Let's get into it.
Hello everyone, my name is Matthew F. Stevens. I host a podcast called EQ Unlocked, and I'll be helping Bob with the intro, outro, and future projects as a voice within OTR universe. It's truly great to be here, and I'm excited to be part of this podcast, the blog, and the special announcements ahead as we continue the mission of putting a dent in the stigma surrounding mental health. Before we begin, a content warning. This episode includes a discussion of suicide, trauma, and lived experience of a first responder in a PTSD crisis. Some of what Andrew talks about may be triggering for listeners living with PTSD. Please take care of yourself and listen at your own pace. Today's conversation with someone who has lived a life most people only hear about and carried burdens that most people never truly see. Andrew McLean spent nearly 2 decades as a police constable with the Waterloo Regional Police Service. He worked frontline patrol, trained new recruits, and served as a detective investigating major crimes including shootings, stabbings, armed robberies, and gang-related cases. Before entering policing, Andrew worked as a news reporter, which gave him both a reporter's eye and a deep sense of responsibility for the stories and people behind the work. In 2021, after years of carrying the weight of what he witnessed and what he could no longer unsee, Andrew hit a breaking point. He was diagnosed with PTSD and has been rebuilding ever since. Since then, he's written openly about that collapse, not to dramatize it, but to understand it, and to speak honestly about what trauma does to first responders long after the shift ends. This isn't a police story. It's a human story about identity, pressure, loss, trauma, and what happens to the body when it finally says enough. Andrew doesn't perform here. He tells the truth as he lived it. This episode includes early examples of how the system failed Andrew, and we'll go into that deeper in part 2. Today's conversation focuses on the cause that led to his PTSD and the reality of first responder PTSD. Also, make sure you stay until the end of the episode for a special announcement involving an exciting new product we'll be unveiling. Enjoy the show, everyone.
Now, here's Bob with today's show.
Hello, and welcome to OTR. You just listened to Mr. Matthew Stevens, and he will be joining me for the outros and intros, and also other things down the road. So we're very happy to have him. I will still be doing the interviews. I'm not going anywhere. So stay tuned for his outro after the show. Today we have Andrew McLean on the phone. Andrew, could you start us off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. So I have 2 careers. So I started my working life as a journalist in radio and broadcasting. And I did that for about 10 years. And I always wanted to be a police officer right from childhood all the way through. And then once I got married and started having responsibilities like kids and stuff, I realized I needed to make more money. So I took the plunge into my policing career at age 32. In 2007, I was hired and I served various roles within the policing. I was obviously in patrol where everyone starts, but I was also a field training officer, an acting sergeant, and I served in detectives as well. up here applied. So yeah.
When you were growing up, how was the atmosphere? Was it a friendly, functional family, or a little bit unfunctional?
Well, I mean, what family is functional?
Not too many. I don't think I've had one so far. Yeah.
Yeah, we had our ups and downs. So I was raised in a very blue-collar family, very traditional household. So my mom stayed home and took care of me, and my dad worked in a factory here in Brantford that basically everybody in Brantford worked at before it shut down, called Massey Ferguson. And he worked in the paint and foundry end of it. So he would always come home covered in paint and worked in like a dungeon, basically. He took me through there, and it wasn't easy work. My dad was a high school graduate, never got any post-secondary education or anything like that, but he managed to put a roof over our heads and worked a lot to do that and support his family. I kind of credit him for my work ethic, but my dad also worked very hard. I was an only child, and I could see anyway, being an only child, how it affected my empathy growing up. I was very empathetic, and I was a people pleaser because I saw that he did a lot of hard work. So did my mom. They fought a lot, like any younger married couple does with a small child. And, I just tried to be the peacemaker in the household. And, it's not a problem that's uncommon, especially nowadays, especially with, economic troubles and all this other stuff. But, they did their best. And it took me, I watched my dad die of cancer when he was very young. He was only 72. And that was his, it was directly related to all the work he did, growing up, right? Because this was before the ages of personal protection and masks and all this other stuff, when you're working around chemicals and paints and all sorts of nasty stuff that he was breathing in. And, I kind of gained any respect for him.
Back in the day, they didn't care. Nobody cared. I had an uncle that died the same way. He was in a factory. Yeah, and he died very young. But no one cared about it, So
yeah, it's a shame. Like I learned a lot from him, and I, every day I still wish he was around to see me today,
sure.
that I could share in some of this stuff with him. Yeah,
it's just it's not a good thing. But you didn't feel that you had any kind of a depression as a child, or at any time before you went into your first job. You felt?
I think so. It's kind of funny because when you look back on it, you just think it's life, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't realize what it is.
Right.
But yeah, I believe so. Like it, I was always very concerned, let's put it that way, about, if they spent too much money on me or pleasing them. And when I couldn't live up to what the expectations were, I did get somewhat depressed.
Okay.
But it kind of manifests itself in guilt.
Yeah.
That, somehow you're not good enough, right?
Right.
And, it's taken a lot of therapy, up to this point for me to kind of realize that, right? And that's what transcended my entire life, and when I look back on it, it's rather, you have that aha moment where you're like, you know what, I guess that's what it was.
Yeah.
And you just live with it, right? You don't notice the physiological sides of your depression or anything like that when you're a kid. You're just a kid doing your kid things, it goes away and it comes back sometimes. But, the way it manifests itself as an adult, it's kind of the same.
Yeah.
I would agree. I mean, it's just, I was never diagnosed with anything like that.
I think there's just so many people that have depression and they just don't realize what the problem is and they don't treat it,
right.
And then it becomes, yelling at your child or hitting your child or some kind of other abuse comes out. I think that happens a lot, and it's sad. And it may be what started your issues, and we'll get into all of that. But so you went into your first job was, you said, journalism, right?
Yeah. So I was a radio broadcast journalist. So I would do cover breaking news stories for radio station in Kitchener, Ontario, actually, which is just north of here. And a lot of that stuff was the crime beat. So it was like most of it was in the morning. It was whatever happened on the night before, and I'd be the guy on scene doing it. But I would also work on features. So, cold case files I worked on. One of the series I worked on got a pretty prestigious award, an Edward R. Murrow Award, when I was still in radio there, which is a pretty big deal. But so, yeah, but my whole reason for doing that was to, get people's stories out there that, that many people didn't see, and make sure that some of these victims of crimes or the families of murder victims or whatever that were never solved weren't forgotten, and all of them had a story to tell. And that was kind of what I always gravitated towards anyway. It was just an overarching need to help. Now, once the policing career came along, it was kind of in that transition of when news stopped becoming facts-based and started becoming entertainment-based. And I saw that shift because I worked in it, where everything had to be sellable now, right? So you got to get people going, you got to get reaction, you have to, get people angry or upset at something, and
you have to spin it, right, a certain way. You have to make sure it sounds like it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and then all of a sudden we had owners.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
And so we had to toe the company line and that sort of thing. So I kind of lost my passion for that right around when I was applying to become a police officer. Right. And I thought, well, what better way to transition from what I was doing to something else that I'm very passionate about and just do that. And that's kind of the way it turned out, like I love my time in radio. It was just time to go,
As a news reporter, did you ever see it like a dead body or something really upsetting, or did you ever get really upset at something as a newspaper?
Yeah. So I mean, I would be like kind of the first news on scene. So typically the police would have the area cordoned off, so you really wouldn't see anything unless it was like in the open, like a traffic accident on the major highway here that had shut down the road or something like that. Then you would probably see a tarp, but you wouldn't really get close to the dead body. You don't really see much, so you're kind of detached from that. Where I would say the most of the emotional sort of baggage from my reporting days would come from is just absorbing other people's stories. So I would feel their hurt, their grief, their anger, their panic.
It wasn't firsthand, and that's a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's like secondhand, right? So you're just seeing the aftermath of it. It's not being directly there and in control of it like it is in policing. Like you see it all in policing, right? And quite honestly, I thought I had seen it all when I was a reporter, and perhaps I look back on it as arrogance, right? Getting into the policing field. But it only took one day, my first day on the road in policing after police college and all that, to realize, wow, this is different.
Did you?
This is some serious shit.
What age were you when you applied and got into the police force?
Yeah, I was hired at 32.
32, okay. And that's a prime year for depression. So, yeah. Did you ever feel depression during the news job? Did you ever feel like something really upset you badly and you were depressed about it, or any general depression at that point?
When I started policing?
No, during your newscasting.
News depression? Yeah. Well, I mean, there was... I felt the pressures of I guess what would have been like my dad. Now my wife at the time worked, so we had double income, but radio didn't really pay all that well. So for the amount of money that for the amount of time I was putting into that job, I really wasn't getting paid all that well. Like I was basically on call 24/7 and had a pager with me in case I needed to go somewhere and stuff. And I was making like $22,000 a year, and the depression started to come when I realized that being upwardly mobile really didn't mean anything. So I could have gotten a job in Toronto, but it would have paid maybe $40,000 a year. And so I would actually be making less, given that I would have to commute there because I wouldn't be able to afford to live in that city.
Right.
And with a kid already here and another one on the way, I was like, I can't afford this. Like, I just can't afford this career anymore. So I think the depression kind of took its form in my sense of responsibility towards my family at that time.
Right.
To earn my keep, I guess, for lack of a better term, and ensure that my girls had a steady and good upbringing that was free from the arguments that I saw as a child, the financial ones, are we going to lose our home stuff, and a stable career. I needed to provide them that as well, so that I wouldn't be laid off or fired or whatever, because it's a very transitional industry. So there was a lot of pressures.
How old were your kids when you got your police job?
My youngest daughter was 6 weeks old.
Oh boy!
And my other one was 2.
Wow, yeah. That's pressure right there. Yeah, I know when I had kids, it really sent me for a loop. It was just like, oh my God. Yeah. That type of thing, but
it's suddenly not about you anymore, right? It's about
there's a lot of pressure. It just really put a big weight on me. So I think that's important to note. But you didn't really feel that bad at that point when you joined the police force, right? You were okay.
I was excited. I thought this was my opportunity.
This was your chance to help everybody. Finally. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, finally the word's turning. I'm getting paid more money. Maybe my wife and my kids would be proud of me, and I think I can make a real difference in the world. I mean, that was really my motivation, and that's what I thought at the time. Perhaps again naively, but I thought finally I'm going to have a steady, stable income. I'm going to have great benefits. The hours are going to suck, but it is what it is. But eventually, maybe won't be working those hours in the service. I'll be doing something else in the service. You know what I mean? Like, it's very much, I understood I had to put my time in, doing stuff, learn the job, because nobody knows how to do that job until you actually do it. Like nobody does. I don't care what you are.
Did you go out on the beat, as they say? I mean, you just hooked up with somebody. Like, how does it all go down? Did you have to take like a course and where they teach you how to fight and all that?
Yeah. So up here in Canada, in Ontario, we have what's called the Ontario Police College. So once you get hired with the service, you have a couple weeks of just kind of get to know you training at your local service. Mm-hmm. And then they take you and then you go to the Ontario Police College, which is about an hour away from here, for 13 weeks of intensive training. So you learn how to shoot your gun, you learn how to fight, you learn the Criminal Code of Canada, you learn all the provincial statutes and how to enforce them. They take you through controlled scenarios about what you might expect on the job. And you have to pass each level along the way, even driving a police car, because it's very different than driving a normal car, right? So they teach you all of that. Then you come back to the service after you graduate there, and there's another couple weeks of training that we had at the service, sort of localized stuff, starting to learn how to do your paperwork and that kind of thing. And then they pair you up with a coach officer or a field training officer for 60 shifts, and they teach you how to do the job. So they start in the driver's seat, then you move over to the driver's seat and start, doing the majority of the work and that sort of thing. But they just kind of show you how to do stuff along the way, teach you how to talk to people, what to look for, how to handle calls, how to de-escalate people, what to do in certain situations, and how to practice the law, essentially, and how to make quick decisions. Because, going in there cold, even after all that training, you have no idea what to expect. It's a very, very different world that we deal with. Like I often say, 90% of the population is shielded by us and have no idea what goes on right underneath their noses. Like it's a very much a culture shock, and as somebody who did that news reporting, in my previous career on crime stuff, I was shocked at how much I did not know. So it was a very humbling experience.
Yeah, and all this training, how much mental health training did you get?
In the beginning, none.
Zero, right? Yeah. They didn't say anything about what do you do when you see a bloody body or anything. They were just like, nothing. They didn't do anything, right? Yeah.
Your boss might be like, you good? And that'd be about it at the scene. I don't think I've ever participated in a debrief or anything after a major call in my entire career. I mean, towards the end of my time before I got diagnosed with complex PTSD and major depressive disorder because of the job, they started putting window dressing sort of on mental health. So they recognized that it existed, but there wasn't really any. I mean, there wasn't much help out there for it. Like, it's just like, if you're feeling this, you might have that. Okay, and go see our services psychologist. Well, their job is to get you back on the road as soon as possible, right?
Yeah.
And the culture of policing in and of itself is very hush hush when it comes to this. So it's all there's a stigma attached to it, because if you were to say, like, I'm feeling off, there's a bunch of implications that could happen as a result of that. They could take you to the hospital. They could, take you off the road, or, put you in a different segregated spots where you're just doing paperwork and not really doing the job you wanted to do. And so all of this plays into your thought process about how you're handling your own mental health.
Right.
So that's why a lot of people just stuff it down.
Yeah.
And just move on, saying it's a part of the job. And don't realize, because it's kind of insidious in the sense that it happens gradually over time, how much it changes you.
When did you I'm sorry. When did you first realize that maybe you were in over your head?
Yeah. So I would say probably about 10 years into my career, it's around 2017-ish, I started having dreams. So really bad dreams, like very violent, very job-related dreams. But the context of them were way out of proportion. Like, and I could start, like, I wasn't sleeping very well, and I just chalked it up to the shift work. But my dreams were very vivid, so all of my senses were intact in the dreams. So I would feel pain. If I got shot in my dream, I would feel it. I would feel the blood. If my partner had his head blown off, I would see it, and I could touch the blood and feel the wet. I felt fear. I could feel all of these things, and they're very vivid in color, right?
Did you experience anything really bad before these dreams started?
I think it was just an accumulative thing. Okay. I mean, I dealt with lots of bad stuff, and everything from doing a death notification, even, like if somebody's loved one was killed in a traffic accident or some kind of horrific workplace accident or some kind of sudden death. There's that, but there's also the crimes themselves and some really heated acts of passionate violence. Like, just one story. It was a quiet Sunday. Like, again, it was sunny. It was beautiful. It was springtime here. So people were out, enjoying the weather, blah, blah, blah. Nothing was really happening. And it was kind of one of those Sundays where we just got caught up on paperwork, essentially. You find a parking lot, get caught up in your paperwork, do whatever it is you got to do. And there was only two of us on the road because we were going through a shift change at that time. And we just got a 911 hang up. So somebody called 911 and hung up the phone. And so whenever that happens, obviously they get the number, they track down the address. We have to go make sure everything's okay. And typically it's just a kid dialing 911. Like, these calls rarely turn into anything. So we were just going up there, la-di-da, taking our time. And then all of a sudden, the dispatcher tells us that this dad is chasing around his daughter and wife with an axe.
Oh my God!
In his house, in like a suburban neighborhood, right? We're like, what the? So anyway, all they could hear is screaming and axe, on the phone, right? So they're trying to relay that to us. So on goes the lights and sirens. We get up there eventually. It took us about 5 minutes to get there. And then once we got there, all we heard was screaming in the backyard. So we took our guns out. We ran into the backyard, and we see this daughter just sitting underneath the deck saying he's got an axe inside and mom's still inside and blah, blah, blah. Just completely, losing it. Like, in an emotional state that you couldn't talk her down. She was so heightened, obviously, because her dad's chasing around with an axe. So obviously we knew this was a serious situation. So we go up to the back door and we can look inside and we see the house completely destroyed. Like, like axe marks in the wall, furniture, like, just destroyed. And the poor wife was just standing there in the middle of this mess. We couldn't see him, didn't know where he was. So we opened the door, called the police, asked her to come to us, and she was white as a ghost. And she just said, "It's all my fault. It's all my fault."
Wow.
She had a scar above her eye, and she was bleeding a bit. And we're like, "Where is he?" He's in the bathroom, sitting on the toilet, not doing anything, just sitting on the toilet with his head in his hands, and he had this gigantic knife in between his legs.
Mm.
So obviously our guns were still out, and called him out and arrested him. He was one movement away from me shooting him.
Yeah.
And at the time, you don't process the gravity of that situation, like of what just transpired, because my partner and I were just like, holy crap, what just happened, right?
Yeah. That's insane.
We do it. And kind of the physiological sort of feeling that I learned to recognize was this tingling that would go up and down my spine. So like your hair is standing on end, right? You get this little shiver, and it's like, what's going on? So we were both settled into the situation, and we're like, fuck, we almost killed someone today, and then you start thinking about that. And of course, the priority at the station is getting the paperwork done as fast as possible. This guy's going to be in jail. He's got an arraignment in the morning. So you just go in robot mode, and you do that. But the problem is when you get back in your car again,
mm-hmm.
and you can't turn that off, and you start noticing that you can't turn that robotness off. So you're on high alert all the time. You're looking around. You can't settle down because you're just go all the time. And then you start thinking about this daughter, and then you start thinking about the wife, and what a terrible situation. Like I can't think of a better example of battered wife syndrome than that.
Yeah.
And
she was blaming herself.
If you want to help someone. Yeah. You want to go in, if you're going into this to help someone, you start learning very quickly that you can't help everybody.
No, there's too much evil.
It hurts.
Yeah. So you were beginning to feel depression, really. You were beginning to feel it.
Yeah.
And do you feel that you were, like some people are deep thinkers, they're deep feelers, they feel things more than others in a sense. Do you think you were in that category? Like, did you take it in more than most people?
And along this journey, I kind of look at it in retrospect, right? I've always been an empath.
Right.
And part of being the empath is that you feel everything very deeply.
Right. I'm that way.
You feel rooms very, very deeply, other people's emotions, all of that.
Yes. And that's hard. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of policemen are, they kind of numb out, they turn it off, and it doesn't affect them as much. But,
I often say, like, I often say, like, the guys that can survive 30 years on the job are a different bunch of people.
Yes.
Some are very, very good at what they do, but they have the ability to shut it off.
Yes.
Others have very socio or psychopathic personalities that they just have no empathy. So they can't really put themselves into the other people's position. And we've all seen cops like that. I'm not going to stick up for those ones. But the ones that actually give a shit, and can't help but to put themselves into the role of the victim or the complainant or whatever, or even the offender, right?
Yes.
You're doing that all the time. It's very, very exhausting. And, one of the defense mechanisms that I started to feel was numbness. So I would just be numb, like emotionally numb.
Yeah, you were shutting down.
Because, I didn't know this, but, kind of my therapist pointed this out to me, once all of this started coming out, is that my cup was already full.
Yeah.
And I just kept adding more water into it, and it eventually overflowed when I had my breakdown. And my whole life has just been filling up this cup. It's remarkable I even lasted that long, according to them. But you just have no idea how to shut it off, but your brain does it for you without you even knowing it. Suddenly nothing interests you anymore. Like, I used to golf. I like to play tennis. I like to go outside.
That's
fish.
That's
didn't do any of that.
Yeah. Well, what can I ask you? You don't have to answer this, but what was the worst thing that you saw out there in the world?
Geez, there's a few, but a couple come to mind. And a lot of them were actually suicide related, like people that killed themselves.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, like, because you feel like, I'll give you an example, but the thing is with suicides and why they stick out to me so much is, number one, it's such a waste of life.
Yes.
But number two, the heaviness that comes along with it. So when you go into that place where they took their final breath of their own hand, not only is it very messy, there's nothing dignified in death, but it's also, you just feel the heaviness.
And the survivors are brutalized.
Yeah. And it's like, why didn't you just reach out for help? I could have been here 3 hours ago to help you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until my own suicide attempt that I always thought it was very selfish suicide. And then once I had my own ideation and attempt, I finally got their pain. But the one that sticks out to me, and it's a particularly hard one because it still resonates with me, and it causes me a lot of pain. But it was a mother. She had committed suicide in a garage, and she left 2 kids behind, and they were aged 12 and 9.
Oh my God!
And they had no parents left because the dad died about 6 months earlier of some illness. And anywho, the neighbors found her in the garage after the kids couldn't find mom in the morning. It was like a quiet Saturday morning. I mean, in a cul-de-sac where everyone knew everyone. And of course, I get there and you just see this poor woman hanging limp in a garage. And you know, because like, yeah, she was gone, but didn't look gone. You know what I mean? And just the look of sadness on her face and the heaviness in that room, it affected the other 2 officers that I was with too. But I was the acting sergeant that day, so I was running the road, and more than that was having to tell the children.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh God!
And those screams, while those screams still echo in my ear to this day, I can't get that memory out of my mind, and it haunts me. It puts me in a state. Takes me days to get over it. You know, when they start coming, but I can't control when those memories start flooding back. The paramedics that were there with us, actually, they were so touched by this that they forgot a lot of their equipment at the house when they drove away.
Mm-hmm.
So I loaded all their equipment into my car, my police car, after I was done at the scene, and I drove it back to the paramedics headquarters, and they had already left for the day. The boss had given them the day off, or the rest of the day off after that call. And you know, I was alone. I you know, just carrying on. I was 2 hours into my shift. I went to a parking lot and I cried.
Yeah.
I cried like a baby. I didn't know what was happening.
Were you in like a panic, or did you feel like you were losing control, or?
I felt like I was starting to lose control of my mind.
Anxiety, right? Anxiety.
Yeah, and you know, that was when I started. The physiological symptoms that started were like my hands would shake.
Right.
I wasn't necessarily scared of going to calls. I just couldn't take it anymore. Mm-hmm. I couldn't take solving people's problems. Mm-hmm. And on that particular day, I still had 10 hours left in my shift after this was done. Mm-hmm. So I still had to I still had to do shit.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can only compartmentalize that kind of thing so much.
That's the
thing. We're dealing with real life tragedy.
I mean, for the person that commits suicide, they're going to be gone, but they're going to leave all these people who love them. And there are people that love you that you don't even know they love you. And they're going to leave them in misery. And basically, for some of them, the rest of their lives, they're going to eliminate their Christmases, their Easters, everything's going to be gone for them. So this is what you do, and this is why I try to get people to listen that you can get better, and you know you can get
100%.
better. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And you know what? You know, I've come to, you know, through the work I've done on myself, you know, over the last 5 years now. And I still have bad days, but you know, the one thing that I've realized is that the world's a better place with you in it.
Right.
And there's a certain gift to, our diagnosis that deserves us to tell our stories.
Yes.
Because the one thing that was overwhelming to me at the beginning was I felt like a failure. I felt guilty because I wasn't going to work anymore, and then I was abandoning my guys, and I felt very, very alone. Like nobody understands what I'm going through. There's nobody else that understands.
What happened? Like, what was the breaking point? What was the time where you just said enough?
Yeah. So the last night I worked, I was going through my separation and divorce from my first wife. I was not seeing the kids. I was living with my mother because I was still paying for the marital home that she was living in. So I couldn't afford a place of my own. So I was just living with my mom at the time. And I had to choose to take myself out of detectives because they had moved our unit to Waterloo, which was about an hour and 20-minute drive from where I was currently living. And I was living in Brantford with my mom and there because that's where my kids were. So I could still take them to their swimming in the morning or do whatever it is I had to do as a dad. Right. So, anywho, I was back on the road and I brought back to the road with me all this wealth of knowledge of, being in detectives and stuff. So the kids were coming to me, the younger officers were coming to me for advice and I would help them out and blah, blah, blah. And I was working on a domestic, a very particularly bad domestic where it was an immigrant woman. And so they brought kind of the old culture to there. And the husband had videotaped, had cameras in the house. So whenever she moved, he would see it. If she left the house, she would completely trapped in this house. Anyway, I was in the middle of working on that. And the boss had called me into the office and I was surrounded by two sergeants that were on my shift and my staff sergeant. And they started giving me shit basically for coaching the young kids on how to do their job. And I wasn't getting the acting sergeant time anymore. I really wasn't getting any field training officer time. I took a $10,000 a year pay cut for my family so I could be around. And now I'm getting in shit because I'm teaching the kids how to do their job. And they brought up my marriage. They brought up all sorts of things. And I was just so 16, 17 years on the job, and this is what I get. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I left despondent. I was just there's no future here for me. Why am I bothering? Why am I, I was very angry. I was upset. And then actually one of an officer that I trained, sent me a message to meet with him after that meeting was done. And I was just crying, sitting in my cruiser. He pulls up beside me. He's like, Andy, you need to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
This job's killing me. And I'm that was kind of my aha moment where I'm maybe this isn't all just inward, right? This is now starting to show outwardly. This is the price of caring too much.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Maybe you're right. And I went in and I told my boss, I said, I'm not coming in tomorrow or ever.
Wow.
And started the paper. Yeah, and then I just started the paperwork to get my diagnosis with PTSD. And then up here in Canada, in Ontario, we have the Worker Safety and Insurance Board. So if you get hurt on a job, right, through no fault of your own, some kind of illness or whatever, or injury, they take your claim and they actually pay you your salary.
Okay.
If you can't work. So I was deemed not being able to work after, seeing my doctor. When I went to my doctor, my blood pressure was 180 over 130, I believe, resting. So I was a heart attack and a stroke waiting to happen. I was grossly overweight at that point. Never took care of myself because I just didn't care. And then, obviously, my psychologist, I had to go through psychology testing, and they diagnosed me with post-traumatic stress and major depressive disorder, among other things. And so because of that, I got taken out of work. And then so WSIB started paying my salary, which is what I'm currently doing. And it took me a long time to just become functional again. Not even just to have a shower, just to eat.
Yeah. I heard that you came to a point where kind of a breaking point where you approached your mother and told her that you can't do it anymore.
Yeah, like that night I came home, I think I was working night shift, and I came back to my mom's place and laid in bed because she was in bed, but I heard her get up. It was about 7 a.m. I was laying in bed for about an hour, and I just walked up to her, and it was like I was 5 years old again.
Mm.
I just hugged her and I said, I can't do it anymore. And I just broke down.
Mm.
And the sounds coming out of my body were sounds I've never heard come out of my body. Like I'm like wailing.
Yeah.
Like,
you were processing
it
the
just,
pain.
it just blew like a top. Yeah. I was done.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even imagine doing something simple, like even going for a walk or
major
driving
depression.
my car.
Yeah.
Didn't want to see people.
Right.
You know, I just wanted to just crawl in a hole and die.
Yeah, anxiety levels are through the roof. You don't want to do anything. You don't have any.
No.
You don't. Your soul is gone. Basically, that's what major depression is. People don't understand that. Everything is taken from you. Your soul, your life, your love, everything is gone, and it strips you away. And like you said, for months. Not for a couple of weeks, for months.
Right.
So how long did you just lay in bed? How long did you have to endure?
It took me about 6 months.
6 months.
6 months after that. Like, you know, I had to pull myself together, which was hard for the process of being home. Like, I mean, to get the paperwork done for the for the Worker Safety Insurance Board, for work, blah, blah, blah. Also attend appointments with my doctor and my therapist and all that stuff. I had to pull myself together for that stuff, but that's all I did. And then when I was done, I just sat catatonic in a chair with the TV on or in bed.
This has been OTR, Over the Rainbow, Achieving Mental Health for Real. If you'd like to explore Bob's work, visit the OTR blog featuring the 3 core sections, externals, internals, and for real. You'll also find a new section called Shirts, simple OTR tees created for listeners who wanted a way to support and be a part of the project. Everything is available on the blog if you'd like to take a look. Thank you for spending time with us. Take care of yourself and take care of each other. This is Matthew F. Stevens. We'll see you next time.